For those who don't know, I'm Benjamin Byron Davis. I am an actor, and I played Agent Burley in a movie called AntMan and the Wasp. And what you might not know is that I also worked, I've been friends with James Gunn for a very long time, and I did the screen tests for the original casting of Guardians of the Galaxy. So I got to sort of see everybody that tried to take the part from Chris, but Pratt got it, as he should have. But while we're waiting, is there any questions I could answer about Marvel, the MCU? Yeah, go ahead, sir.
On that panel for the casting, who were some of the other actors besides Chris Pratt that didn't get the part?
I could tell you, but then I'd get in a lot of trouble. Some of them are widely known. I think you can look them up, but I will say that everybody that came in worked really hard. But one of the things that was amazing was I got to be there. Pardon me, my phone made a noise. I've known Chris since we've been very good friends for a very long time. And I've known James for about the same amount of time because he was at one point married to the wonderful Jenna Fisher, and she and I were in a theater company in LA at the same time. So I've known James and Chris for about 20 years. And it was just this unique coincidence that he needed somebody who could be a menacing alien and not be CG'd, and so of course he thought of me. Is Ross here?
Yeah.
Terrific. But I got to be there the day that Chris got the job, and that was pretty extraordinary to see your friend land the gig of his life. And he ran with it. Hey, that was amazing.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you about the Red Skull.
Yeah. What do you want to know?
Well, were you on set?
Yeah, it was a funny thing where I don't know how much I'm allowed to say.
It's a real thing.
Yeah.
It's a scary NDA.
Yeah, I'll just say this. I don't know what I can say, but there was an actor that was hired prior to me coming there, who they worked with, and they just didn't feel like it was quite the right voice match for what Hugo had done in 2010. And they'd reached out to Hugo, but I think it was a scheduling issue or something going on there, but he wasn't available. So they just randomly, towards the end of their filming, they said, does Ross do a Hugo impression? I said, I've never tried, but I could try it. And I said, well, which Hugo were we talking about? Because there's Priscilla, Queen of the Desert Hugo, there's Matrix Hugo, there's, all these different type of, Lord of the Rings. I said, what voice are we talking about? And they said, well, it's kind of like, we can't say it's a German Hugo. I'm like, oh, like Red Skull? I was like, got it. And so I said, well, send some samples and I'll give it, and of course it was Red Skull. And then I just sent over a few different samples and they liked it. And then I got there and they had a mocap suit waiting for me. And it was honestly one of the easiest days of shooting in my life. I mean, we did both films back to back in that one day, and it was heaven. I mean, just the Russo brothers knew exactly what they wanted, and it was great because I was coming in with the more like straight on Hugo from Captain America, where it was like, yes, Hail Hydra, that sort of thing. But they were like, that's good, but we want it to be like 84 years in the future, so you got to age him up. And they were like, marry that voice to Yoda. And that is what I ended up doing. I was like, got it. So
that's a pretty good note.
Yeah, he's like a broken Red Skull, so he's not quite as like ambitious. He's very weathered and sort of beaten down by life.
And did you have a helmet?
I did. Yeah, that was fun.
We did Red Dead the same way with those helmets. That shit is great.
And mocap is so fun because it's like theater. It's like acting in a round, and it does feel very free, and you can just kind of act to everyone and no one at the same time because everything is being captured in the information that your suit has, and it's all little diodes all over your body, and every single movement you had is captured in the computer. So it's kind of a wonderful, freeing experience as an actor. It's kind of like going back to theater,
It is a lot, and the thing, some actors would get hired. There was probably 2,000 actors that came in on that show while we were doing it, and you'd see on the faces of even people that they've been around the block, and they're just putting on these very tight suits.
Yeah.
is this for real? I thought this was a voiceover gig.
You feel like you're in Tron a little bit. Like the suits look a lot like the Tron suits from the original Tron, not the 2010 one. Although I love that one too, but the original Tron, that's my jam. Yeah.
That's I don't never film.
Yep.
But the thing that you tell sort of a journeyman actor that's been around is your body's on stage,
Yeah.
your face is in close-up,
Yeah.
and they get there. And the thing is that it's all captured. And then the director, Rod Edge, would come in and, you know, he can put the camera anywhere
Yeah.
he wants
Yeah.
and put these scenes together. And these scenes are just amazing.
It's so good. Yeah, there's some times I will admit, like playing Red Dead, the second one, I cried a little bit. Like there was some moments I was like, oh, I can't believe I'm crying at a video game. It was that emotionally involved, and I don't think I've ever gotten misty playing a video game. That was a new experience for me. So I think it's a testament to the work that you guys did, but also like just how involved video games are now. They're like these expansive movies that seem like a slice of life. You know, it's incredible. So, well, you guys have any questions about anything? You guys want to talk about politics? You guys got any fresh hot takes on climate change? No? Hey, wait. Yeah, what's up?
When Red Skull appears, he's like a kind of like a spirit looking, because he doesn't have a full body form. And then in Captain America, he was, and then he got projected into where he ended up. Was there a reason or explanation how that transformation took place?
So the writers, because I was trying to get as much information as I could, not so much to like get spoilers or anything, although I kind of wanted that too, but more just to know how to play the character, because what they showed me from the reference was vastly different than the Red Skull that you and I had seen in the first Avengers. So, once he grabs the Tesseract, he gets launched up into the astral plane and then somehow winds up in Vormir. And I think in the process of being, his particles were probably scattered and then reconfigured, on that planet. I think it probably killed him, and he might actually be just an astral projection. I don't know if he's actually living matter still, who knows? But there were a lot of allusions to Lady Death. I don't know if you're a fan of the comics. Yeah, so from the original Infinity Gauntlet, Thanos is in love with Lady Death, essentially, right. And is trying to kind of impress her by enslaving all the people of this universe, and I thought that they were doing this kind of cool tip of the hat from Red Skull has now become a hybrid of Red Skull and Lady Death, kind of. But he might have other powers too. He can fly now. He can levitate. What else can he do? I'd be excited to see where that character goes if they have any intention of doing anything with him. But I thought it was funny, when has everyone seen End Game, by the way? If you haven't, do one of these right now, because it's some spoilers ahead. But Captain America at the end of the movie goes and returns all the stones. He's gonna have to go through Vormir at some point. I think that'd be a very awkward exchange. When he sees Red Skull, he's like, oh hey. Yeah, I remember you. What's up? But I don't think it would. I wonder if it would be even a conflict, because I think Cap would just see how broken Red Skull is now that there wouldn't even be a need for a fight, because he's a slave to the Soul Stone. That's his only purpose is to shepherd people to that stone and say, you have a choice. You need to sacrifice that which you love to get this thing. But yeah. That would be a great thing for the extra features, I think.
Well, they're doing, the Comic-Con announcement, one of them, they're doing an animated What If.
Yes.
And that would be a good gig right there.
They should dive into that, I think.
I'll write a letter.
Do you guys know about the What If? Did you hear about this? It's kind of like if all these different characters, if this person were given special powers versus this person. So I think in one of the scenarios, Bucky becomes captain, or whatever it is. I can't remember what it is exactly, but I just got teased in the trailer. They were saying what the scenarios could be, but it's kind of cool,
And you were a comic book guy?
Oh yeah,
Okay, you and me
big,
both.
big time.
Make mine Marvel.
Yeah, same. It's so funny because I grew up reading and drawing these characters. I drew Red Skull for sure. I drew Sabretooth, Wolverine, Omega Red, Mephisto. Those are the guys that I drew all the time. And so when I got the part, I was like, you gotta be kidding me. This is like the craziest day of my life, you know?
I know.
It was amazing. It was
I know
amazing.
it is.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It was me driving a car with Agent Wu next to me,
Yeah.
chasing AntMan through the streets of San Francisco, which had been on the schedule for Pinewood, so I thought it was going to be a process shot. And a process shot means it would be a dummy sort of car, and we'd just be in it, and then what was behind us would be a blue screen, and they'd put the streets of San Francisco, and which suited me.
Yeah.
And then it never happened. And then I finished with the stuff I had to do in Georgia, and then I was on break until the location shoot in San Fran.
Okay.
And then I'm assuming it's going to be a picture car, which, for those who don't know, that's the car is put on a sort of a flatbed, and so you pretend you're driving, but you're not really driving.
Right.
Which also suited me.
Yeah.
Rather well. And then the night before it's on the call sheet, Lars, who is the wonderful first AD, you know Lars?
He's great, yeah.
He's a great guy.
Yeah.
Well, he and Dave Desmalchian, who's also a friend.
Yeah.
You know Dave?
I don't know personally, I know who he is though, yeah.
But so we're all sitting at this wonderful hotel, the Fairmont in San Francisco, and I'm thinking, I've got a fairly easy day the next day. I'm just going to pretend to drive a car. And Lars is like, oh no, you're going to drive the car. And I
On those hills. And
well, that's
stuff.
exactly. I was like, it's not going to be a flatbed. He said, we can't do a flatbed because of the hills. Because if you see the bank of the flatbed, so you're driving the car. I'm like,
That's terrifying.
that was terrifying.
Yeah.
And for the first,
Did you kill anybody?
well, this is so I got really worried. I was like, that guy came really close. And Lars is like, he works for us. It's a stuntman. There is no one on the street that is unrelated to
They
production.
locked that off? Yeah. Jeez.
But by the end of the day, I have realized, we do the run. First, you get in the car, and the stuntman does the run.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I cannot do that. But by the end of it, I'm like hitting a mark with an SUV and hopping out. I felt like, and then Peyton, the director, points out to me that I'm driving at high speeds on the streets of San Francisco in a film with Michael Douglas from the streets of San Francisco, for anybody that remembers the streets of San Francisco.
Yeah.
So I pulled that.
And Basic Instinct, I think that was at San Francisco too, wasn't it?
Oh my God, I forgot about that movie altogether.
Yeah.
But he is amazing.
Yeah.
Michael Douglas is amazing. And I got to tell him off, and he appreciated it. The other funny thing was I wasn't going to talk at all in the film until the very last scene. And then the gag was Wu would walk out, Randall would walk out, and then we shot it. And then I turned to Paul and I'm like, don't screw with that guy. He's a really good guy.
Yeah.
And the joke was they were going to modulate my voice or get somebody else to dub the voice. And it was going to sound like a little girl coming out of my... And they shot, actually, Paul, this beautiful take of him going, I did not expect him to sound like that. And I guess it ended up being too broad. So they added this scene where I get to tell off Michael.
It's funny because I heard that all of the actors didn't know whose funeral they were attending until it was happening. Did you hear that?
I didn't, well, what I learned from the commentary was that I always thought that was a process shot because they couldn't have gotten all those guys together, but they did.
They did. They got everyone together, and I'm sure people kind of figured out, well, who's the one person missing? Tony, you know. But they originally didn't know who the funeral was for going into it, which is such a crazy. I mean, that's when we say like the NDAs that Marvel makes you sign at the beginning of these things, that we will take your firstborn child. Like, you do not say anything, because to your guy, Tom Holland, for example, like, he has a tendency to just, he hears something he wants to share because he's excited about it, which, everyone loves, but they've had to really scale back on the information they give to actors because they're worried that in the moment you're just trying to be, excited about what you're working on, and then all of a sudden you're revealing something. So it's totally understandable, but that's how they've safeguarded against that, and just you can't spoil anything if you don't have the information in the first place. So yeah,
Which becomes, from a script analysis point of view,
tricky.
It can be a challenge.
Yeah. Yes.
What's your favorite superhero and why?
Ooh, favorite superhero and why? Man, that's a tricky one. I mean, do you want to?
Spider-Man was my
Spider-Man.
favorite, and I sold them all when was 18. I could retire on them if I kept them, but I had
Yeah.
Amazing Spider-Man, I think from like issue 40 to 300. The only one I could never get was the Gwen Stacy on the Brooklyn Bridge, 122.
What was that? 63 was when it first came out, right?
No. Oh, yeah, no. Amazing Fantasy 15 was 1963.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. But Spider-Man's my guy, Peter Parker.
Yeah.
Because he was a kid, and I was a kid.
Mine was Wolverine initially, just because he's kind of a perfect superhero in my mind. Like, he's virtually unbreakable, he can heal like that, and he just had a cool backstory, you know? He was a dark soul that was, experimented on by this Canadian research facility, and then, became this hired killer, essentially, and then broke off on his own. But as the years went on, and I got more into, like, more obscure characters, Moon Knight for me was just a fascinating character, because once they delve into Moon Knight's kind of, people make this a comparison, but I think it's a little lazy, but people say it's like Marvel's answer to Batman, and the only comparison I see is that he has a cape and cowl and he's super rich and has some cool gadgets, but he differs in the sense that he has actual superpowers. He was brought back to life by this Egyptian god Khonshu, and he's able to become this badass fighter after being a mercenary for several years. And his backstory is fascinating because the canon from the first 30 years is really, really good, but then in the late 90s, early 2000s, they delve into his mental state, and there's allusions to the notion that he might have dissociative identity disorder. So he's really kind of fluctuating between all these different personalities in his brain, and there's people who think that he might not actually be a superhero at all, that he might just be making all this stuff up in his head, and he might actually be a psycho killer, killing bad guys and sometimes good people. But like, that's the most amazing and fascinating character that I've ever read in comic book lore, because he's not on the surface necessarily good or bad. He's just maybe a crazy person. And I think if you were a superhero, chances are you might be a little bit crazy, I think, like to do what they do, you'd have to be a little bit crazy.
I agree with you.
In the End Game comic, there were a lot of characters that didn't make it to the movie, and kind of alternate characters took over those roles, because you didn't see like Silver Surfer, Adam Warlock, She-Hulk. They seem to have big roles in the comic, but didn't make it to the book. Do you see like She-Hulk, or there's word of I think maybe Silver Surfer coming, because he appeared in the Fantastic Four, and that's coming back out. But characters like She-Hulk or Adam Warlock, do you think they're coming along?
Adam Warlock's already been teased in Guardians 2.
Yeah, at the end.
But if you don't know, Marvel, prior to Kevin Feige starting the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Marvel was selling off its properties piecemeal. So Sony had Spider-Man and Fantastic Four, which might have covered She-Hulk. And then Fox had X-Men. Oh, the Fantastic Four rights covered Galactus and Silver Surfer.
Yeah.
And so all of these characters were split.
But I think they just bought those back, right?
Now because Disney bought Fox, now they're all back. And
Same umbrella.
it's going to be interesting to see what Marvel does. I'm certain they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And people don't know, Kevin Feige, who is he is like the Walt Disney of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But he also was a producer on the very first Bryan Singer X-Men, which really sort of started all of it.
Back in 2000, wow.
Yeah.
Huh, I didn't know that. But yeah, I think I was certainly expecting to see Adam Warlock myself, because he was so big in the Infinity Gauntlet series in the comics. But I felt like they, to your point, they did tease him at the end of Guardians 2, but I thought that they were either going to bring him in at the end, but I really felt like Captain Marvel took over a lot of those story points for Adam Warlock, which is cool, because I think she also is a badass warrior and has a lot of the same powers, cosmic powers that Adam had. But I hope they do give Adam his due, because that's a great character. And Norrin Rad, Silver Surfer, man, that's a guy with Galactus. I mean, like Norrin, for those of you who don't know the backstory of Norrin Radd's Silver Surfer, like he's given a choice to save his planet by essentially becoming Galactus's Herald, yeah, slash, assassin. He goes to other worlds and destroys their worlds, does his bidding, and he did it all just so he could save his own planet. But he's separated from his wife and his family, and he's just this shell of a man by the end of it. But then he turns against Galactus and really fights. And that is, I think, cinematically speaking, you get into the cosmic stuff. That's the stuff I'm most excited about, with the Secret Wars and the Kroll and everything.
And Norrin Radd sought out planets with lower life forms,
Right.
so that intelligent life forms weren't being destroyed by
Exactly.
Galactus.
Yeah. So I'm hoping they do that, because that would be, he just was not used enough in those Fantastic Four movies. He was just kind of like a tertiary character. And
Although
that's-
Fishburne did a pretty good
he,
job with the
he
voice.
did a great job with the voice. Yeah.
And I think Doug Jones did the performance capture.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So your next movie, would you rather do that as a CGI character or a live actor with really good special effects makeup artist?
Ooh. I'll be honest, I love the process of being made up, but there's a real freedom in just having dots on your face and a mocap suit and a camera, because they do all that after the fact. Hugo was apparently in the chair for like 3 hours every day at the beginning of the day, and then another hour and a half at the end of his day. So that stuff, and I'm allergic to liquid latex, so if they use anything latex-based, it would definitely burn my face, as I learned in college when I was doing a play where I had to wear this heavy prosthetic stuff. I was a burn victim, and it left a permanent scar for quite some time, a couple years, before I finally found the right cream to put on there. But yeah, so if it were me, I'd prefer the dots, because it's so much easier, and you have more freedom to just kind of move your face and actually express your emotions more naturally. Yeah, we're out there. I mean, right now it's about usually between 97 and 100 degrees every day with 100% humidity, and you're covered in ticks and mosquitoes and no-see-ums, and you're just getting bit up like crazy, while also wearing way too many layers of clothing. They're like, hey, for the winter scenes, we're going to have you in a t-shirt and shorts, and then for the summer scenes, we're going to have you in a three-piece, suit for some reason. You're like, what? But it's fun, because you get to lose weight. It's like a sauna, personal sauna, every day. But also, there's shows that you work on that you feel like you've earned your day. I've worked on some shows that are like Mad Men, for example. So much fun to work on. It was just a one and done, easy shoot, and I didn't sweat. It was very casual, no drama, no like, we gotta get this shoot now because the sun's going down. It was all in a controlled environment, and it was so much fun. But by the end of the day, I was like, that was just fun. That was great. But it was, I didn't feel like I was like, I really worked really hard. But on The Walking Dead, you're like, you earn your days, and at the end of those days, you're like, oh my God, I'm ready for bed, and you sleep really well.
But you have weird.
She asked what it was like when Andy left the show. For those who haven't met Andy Lincoln, like genuinely the best number one on the call sheet I've ever worked with. He's, aside from being the most professional guy I've ever worked with, he's also one of the sweetest, nicest guys I've ever worked with. We miss him like crazy. There's also talk, of course, of the movies coming out, which seems like they're going to be going into production soon. So I'm excited to see what happens with that. I don't know if any of our characters will cross over. We'll see, but I hope I get a chance to work with him again in some way, shape, or form, because he's the best. He's honestly the best. Yeah, and I hope you get to meet him someday if you haven't yet. So, yeah. But, yeah.
I was wondering, how was it for you playing a character like Dutch?
Awesome. I mean, it's an interesting thing. Marvel's NDA is a scary NDA. Rockstar's NDA has teeth. I mean, it costs money if you screw up. I think I just did screw up. But when I did the first game, all I knew about the character was he had been a gang leader, he'd lost his mind, he read a lot of books, and he was a good speaker. And that was all I knew. I didn't know that I was the main gang leader. I hoped I was, but until I played the game, I didn't know. So when I got the chance, and I really hoped I was going to get the chance to return to the character, it was a whole different ballgame. Because unlike everybody else on that show, I knew I wasn't going to die. I knew I was going to lose my mind. And I knew things were going to go really, really badly. And so it became a 5-year exploration with our wonderful director, Rod Edge, the amazing writing from Dan Houser and Rupert Humphreys and Michael Unsworth, figuring out who this guy was. And it was a process, because it was a balance of, why would anybody follow this guy? And so we had to figure out the why of that. And was it because they were afraid of him, or was it because he was an excellent leader? And it was really, I can't imagine a luckier, speaking of, a boat to get into, I can't imagine a luckier role to have. And I became an actor because of, and Hal Prince just died. I don't know if you know who Hal Prince is, but he was a theater director. He directed the original Broadway production of Sweeney Todd. I saw the touring company in Boston when I was 9 years old, George Hearn and Angela Lansbury, in Hal Prince's direction of Sweeney Todd. And that was the first time I fell in love with the character. And even at 9 years old, Sweeney Todd is a dark character. I don't have the voice for the role. I tried really hard when I was at NYU. I did multiple songs from it. I could pull it up, but nobody would want to pay to hear that. But it's interesting that that was sort of the role that I always wanted to play. And then I end up meeting this guy, Dutch, that nobody ever played. And I just get to be the guy that played him. And that, to me, is sort of, it's scratching, this is going to make me misty, but it's sort of scratching a 9-year-old an itch that I got to be. Because I sort of see Dutch a bit like I see sort of Sweeney, that he's this guy who's all heart, and yet the only way he seems to interact with the world leads to lots of dead people.
Story of my life.
Late, because just the sheer scope of all of these people.
Half of Hollywood's in that movie. It's ridiculous.
They're all big. Every single actor could open a movie on their own, and they're all in one film together. It is. I don't know that it's, because DC, I think they've done remarkable films, and I'm very excited. James Gunn's The Suicide Squad is coming. I'm very excited to see what James does with that. But what Marvel, Louis Esposito, Victoria Alonso, and Kevin Feige, what they have managed over 23 films is unique in the history of cinema, and I think will be unmatched in the history. I don't think it'll ever happen again.
I mean, I don't know how you get it. So it's like Elvis, like how do you ever get that level of I don't know, that much of a fever pitch of excitement over an anthology of work that's just incredible,
And they're all so good.
They're all very good.
We have 0 minutes left.
0 minutes left. Okay, good. Thank you guys for coming.
Thanks so much.
Enjoy the show. Yeah.